Welcome back. We have Sandy Volo joining us from Abbott Wealth on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Susan.
Yes, we have an interesting topic today. We're talking about generational values and why they're important when it comes to your investments.
Yeah. So I think with many people, they think that, you know, when you're setting your estate plan up, you're thinking you're just passing on your wealth, right, to your loved ones. But really, it's about passing on the values that you've lived by all your life, how you've taught your kids, how they've grown up. Recently, Abbott Wealth team had the fortune, or the good fortune, of spending an evening with Thomas Deans, and he is an author of Willing Wisdom and Every Family's Business. So there are a couple books that have been on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's about that. It's about how do you transition from your life savings and what you've created in your family, their values, and transition them on to the next generations, where they're going to understand what you were trying to build.
Yes.
So I did do a couple slides that are available, I believe.
Here we go.
So
the first one's coming up.
So basically just that. There's far more important assets to pass on to the next generation than wealth. And then, you know, going further on that, we all have a vision, mission, value statement. I think that even if you haven't written it down, you've got one that you live by. So, you know, you have a mission in life, and then you have your vision on how you're going to get there, and then you've got the values that have led you to, you know, to get there. So he's a very big believer, and so are we, in having family meetings. So you're going to sit down at a dinner table, a coffee table, or even in our office, we've designed a room called our family room that we would have facilitate family meetings. And it's about sharing with your children what you have. What have you accumulated? How do you want to pass that down to them? And it may not be just wealth. It may be your dreams for the future, what you want to pass as a legacy, or we've talked about charitable giving in the past, but making sure your kids know what your thoughts are there.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
have a screen, we can go up on, here we go, family meetings.
And always remember that actions speak louder than words. You know, children learn what they observe, and it's easier to pass on your wealth than it is your values. So it's always reiterating to them what is important. What do you foresee in the future? Do you want to make sure that you've provided their children, like your grandchildren, with an education? So, you know, you want to continue on the registered educational savings plan accounts for them, and so on. So it's just making sure that you have the collaborative and free conversations about what are your desires for going into the future. Another really important thing was treating your children the same. So you don't give one child $20,000 and don't give it to the next child. And his thinking on that is, if you're helping one daughter or whatever buy a car, you should be doing the same for the other one. If it's $20,000, you should be giving the other one $20,000. If you can't afford to do it for both, it's too much. So you shouldn't be doing it for the first one. Some things, though, you do pass on after death, right? Maybe a family business or a cottage. And it's really important to make sure it's equalized in your will. You know, if you're doing a $400,000 family cottage and there's a $400,000 business, can that be just divided equally, and each one has that? So it's a matter of keeping it the same. But also, if you're treating one differently than the other, is make sure you've communicated to them why. Why am I treating you differently? Have I already given you money in the past? And I'm just trying to make sure that everything is the same. So that would be like, you know, if you're going to do a pre-death gift, make sure it's even. If there's a family business or property that's going to pass after you are no longer here, just to make sure that you've told your children that.
Yes.
Some kids would get a lump sum in a will, and others might get something in the form of an annuity where it's going to be paid out over time and not just a lump sum, because you're not doing them a favor, by some kids anyway, by giving it to them all at once.
Yep, totally.
You know, and you want to make sure that you've set them up. So if you have the ability, give them small gifts before you die, so you could see what they do with those injections. You know, are they taking off to Vegas and blowing the money that you've worked really hard? Well, that's going to make a difference on how you're going to lay things out. Another really good point that he made was to make sure that your will's up to date. And I'm just going through this right now, actually, because my will was done 10 years ago. So I had our lawyer look at it, and what I had really thought was there was not. So we're making some changes. So just making sure that it's always open. A lot of people don't like to talk about it with their kids. They think it's, you know, they won't work if they know that they're going to get X amount of dollars in the future. And if you set them up properly and they live by the values that you have taught them, That's not going to happen.
That's right.
Right? They're going to be very responsible, and they're going to be a custodian for the money that you have saved, and they're going to pass it on to hopefully their children and then their children.
Yes.
So it's how you set them up in life, and always to make sure that you have that clear back and forth communication. The last thing, though, I'd like to say, and it kind of goes back to your will, and John's going to talk about this a little bit more.
Yes.
But make sure your children know who your executor is. Why you've chosen them, because they're going to go, well, why wasn't it me? You know,
Sure.
I should have been the one. But maybe one is located more in your area. Maybe one has got some experience in the business. So make sure that you've told them why you've done what you've done, and that you have a health directive in place.
Let's put that on the screen. We've got that in the preview screen. There it is.
Yeah. So to just make sure that you've gone through everything. What you want at end of life too, it's always important. I mean, at the end of the day, it's most often your children that are going to have to make that decision on what's going to happen. The last thing though is, and I know John's going to talk a little bit more about wills and powers of attorney and health directives when he comes back the next time. But something that's very interesting is that every person of legal age should have a will with a directive, a health directive. It just takes that burden. I mean, we never ever want to think of something happened to our children, but what if? What if that happened and now you have to make a very tough decision on what to do? If they've already set it up and they've got their will and they've got their health directive in place, it just takes it off, some of that burden off of your shoulders as a parent, right?
I've heard people say, oh, I don't have kids, I don't need a will.
Oh, everyone needs a will. Everyone. You know, if you have accumulated even such a small amount, the government's going to take control. And do you want that? Even if all you're doing is leaving it to a charity.
Yeah.
You know, make sure it's your wish. And, you know, in the end of the day, the greatest gift you can give is a clear plan.
Yep.
Making sure you've communicated it and making sure everyone knows your wishes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. Great advice today, Sandy.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have questions about your will, setting it up, making sure you've communicated clearly to your family members, the information is on the screen. You can give them a call directly at 372-3736. We're back after a quick break.